Deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia, there once stood a proud coal mining village called Black Hollow. For generations, the sound of the mine whistle echoed through the narrow valleys at shift change. Men in hard hats walked home covered in coal dust, their boots heavy on the wooden sidewalks. The tipple roared as coal was loaded onto trains. Families filled the small wooden houses that clung to the steep hillsides. Black Hollow wasn't just a town, it was a way of life built on black gold. Then the world changed. By the early 2010s, cheap natural gas flooded the market. Environmental regulations tightened. One by one, the mines closed. The last major operation shut down in 2016. The tipple went silent. The trains stopped coming. Stores on Main Street boarded up their windows. Young people left for the cities in search of work. Streetlights flickered and eventually went dark. The village that once powered America was now dark, broke, and forgotten. Black Hollow collapsed. The population dropped from 2,800 to just 87 souls, mostly elderly residents who had nowhere else to go. The town declared bankruptcy. The county labeled it a distressed community. Even the state government stopped investing. To most outsiders, Black Hollow was finished, another casualty of the dying coal industry, a ghost village slowly being reclaimed by the mountains. But in the fall of 2022, one man looked at the same broken place and saw something no one else could see. His name was Lucas Bennett, 38-year-old American industrial engineer, short dark hair, light stubble beard, wearing dark blue work shirt, brown leather jacket, dark jeans, brown work boots. A former power plant and infrastructure specialist from Pittsburgh, Lucas had spent years designing energy systems for large corporations. He understood power grids, mining infrastructure, and what it took to keep the lights on. But he was tired of working for companies that abandoned towns like Black Hollow once the coal ran out. Lucas first learned about Black Hollow while researching abandoned energy sites for a private project. The location stuck with him, a narrow valley with natural water sources, existing power infrastructure, and proximity to major highways. While everyone else saw ruins and failure, Lucas saw untapped potential for a new kind of energy future. He made the long, winding drive through the mountains one rainy afternoon. As he entered Black Hollow, the sight was heartbreaking. Dilapidated wooden houses leaned on the hillsides. The old tipple stood like a rusty skeleton against the gray sky. Main Street was overgrown with weeds. Streetlights hung dark and broken. The entire village felt heavy with silence. Yet Lucas noticed the bones were still there. The old mine entrance, though sealed, had solid infrastructure. The power substation, though offline, was reparable. The layout of the town was compact and manageable. In his mind, he could already picture lights coming back on, not just electric lights, but the light of hope. Most rational people would have turned their truck around and driven back to the city. Lucas did the opposite. He spent weeks studying the town's bankruptcy filings, the condition of the power grid, and the mineral rights. Then he made a bold, all-in offer. He would purchase the entire collapsed coal mining village, the mine site, the power substation, the tipple, and most of the residential and commercial properties, in one sweeping deal. When the news broke in the local papers, people laughed. Another outsider coming to waste his money on dead coal, they said. Former miners shook their heads. Even some of his own family members begged him to reconsider. You're buying a graveyard, they warned. But Lucas had done the calculations. He believed in the location. He believed in the existing infrastructure. Most importantly, he believed that a town wasn't dead just because one industry had left. After months of complex negotiations with creditors and the county, the deal finally closed. For far less than the cost of building a new town from scratch, Lucas Bennett became the owner of an entire collapsed coal mining village. On the day he took possession, Lucas stood alone in the middle of dark Main Street as light rain fell. The mountains loomed silently around him. He looked up at the broken streetlights and spoke quietly into the damp air. They can laugh all they want. Soon, the lights are coming back on in Black Hollow. He had no idea how difficult and dangerous the journey ahead would be. The real fight, against decay, against doubt, against the mountains themselves, was only just beginning. The first 2 years in Black Hollow were some of the hardest of Lucas Bennett's life. He moved into the old company store building, a drafty wooden structure with a sagging roof and floors that creaked with every step. There was no electricity, no running water that was safe to drink, and the mountain winters cut through the walls like knives. At night, the only light came from his generator or a lantern, and the silence was broken only by the wind howling down the hollow. Lucas started with the most dangerous and urgent work, securing the old mine entrance and assessing the power infrastructure. The mine had been abandoned hastily. Roof collapses, flooding, and methane gas made it extremely hazardous. Every day, Lucas Bennett, 38-year-old American industrial engineer, short dark hair, light stubble beard, wearing dark blue work shirt, brown leather jacket, dark jeans, brown work boots, would gear up with a hard hat and headlamp, carefully mapping unstable areas and documenting what could be salvaged. The physical and mental toll was immense. He spent weeks clearing debris from the old power substation, replacing rusted transformers, and tracing decades-old wiring that had been left to rot. His hands were constantly cut and calloused. His dark blue work shirt was stained with coal dust, grease, and sweat. More than once, a sudden rockfall or burst pipe nearly injured him badly. Money disappeared at an alarming rate. Repairing even basic sections of the power grid cost triple his initial estimates. A major storm in the first winter caused landslides that damaged newly installed lines. Suppliers were hesitant to extend credit to a man trying to revive a dead coal town. By the end of year one, Lucas was deeply in debt and surviving on minimal food while pouring every dollar back into the project. The remaining 87 residents watched him with a mixture of suspicion and pity. Some offered quiet warnings. "Son, this hollow has taken better men than you." Others simply shook their heads and waited for him to fail. A few former miners, like old Mr. Harlan, began helping in small ways, showing Lucas the old grid layouts and sharing stories of how the town once thrived. Doubt hit Lucas hardest during the long, dark nights. He would sit alone on the steps of the company store, staring at the pitch-black valley where streetlights once glowed. In those moments, the laughter of outsiders echoed in his mind. He questioned whether he had thrown away his career and savings on an impossible dream. One freezing January night, after a transformer failure wiped out weeks of progress, Lucas stood in the freezing rain and seriously considered walking away. Yet he refused to quit. He started sharing raw, honest updates on social media and a small YouTube channel, footage of one man fighting to bring electricity back to a forgotten coal village. Slowly, the story began to spread. Engineers, electricians, and people who believed in second chances started reaching out. A retired power grid specialist from Ohio drove 8 hours to spend 2 weeks helping Lucas rebuild the main substation. A group of young volunteers arrived to help clear debris from the streets. Small breakthroughs started appearing like sparks in the darkness. After months of dangerous work, Lucas and his small team managed to restore power to the company store building. When the first light bulb flickered on inside after years of total darkness, it felt like a miracle. Old Mr. Harlan stood beside Lucas with tears in his eyes, whispering, "I never thought I'd see light in this hollow again." By the second spring, momentum was slowly building. Lucas repaired the main power lines running down the valley. Several homes received basic electrical restoration. The old tipple structure was stabilized so it wouldn't collapse. A small solar array was added to supplement the old coal-era grid, showing Lucas's vision for a hybrid future. Still, the challenges were far from over. Another landslide destroyed part of the access road. Cash flow remained critical. Skeptics continued to doubt him publicly. But Lucas kept working from before dawn until long after dark, his brown leather jacket often left hanging on a fence post while he labored in his dark blue work shirt. One quiet evening as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Lucas Bennett stood on the newly repaired substation platform. A single string of lights now glowed along part of Main Street for the first time in years. The soft golden light pushed back against the darkness of the hollow. For the first time in many months, Lucas allowed himself a tired but genuine smile. The lights were beginning to return. But the real transformation, the full return of power, jobs, and a thriving community, was still to come. The third year became the turning point that no one in Black Hollow had dared to dream of. With growing attention from his online videos and support from a few forward-thinking investors who believed in his hybrid energy vision, Lucas Bennett launched the full-scale restoration of the power grid. Professional electrical crews were brought in for the most complex high-voltage work, but Lucas remained hands-on every single day, 38-year-old American industrial engineer, short dark hair, light stubble beard, wearing dark blue work shirt, brown leather jacket, dark jeans, brown work boots, climbing poles, troubleshooting circuits, and personally testing every restored line. He didn't just want to bring back the old coal-era electricity. He wanted to build something smarter and more sustainable. The old substation was completely modernized with new transformers and smart grid technology. A large solar farm was constructed on the cleared mine land, supplemented by small wind turbines on the ridge tops. The abandoned mine tunnels were safely sealed and partially repurposed for geothermal heating experiments. It was a bold blend of old infrastructure and new renewable thinking. The moment the main power lines were energized again was unforgettable. On a crisp autumn evening, Lucas stood at the central substation with a small crowd of remaining residents. When he threw the master switch, the entire valley lit up. Streetlights that had been dark for nearly a decade flickered back to life one by one. Windows in wooden houses began to glow warmly. The old tipple was illuminated with safety lights. For the first time in years, Black Hollow was no longer swallowed by darkness. Old Mr. Harlan, who had lived through the best and worst days of the town, broke down in tears on the street. "You brought the light back, son," he said, gripping Lucas's hand tightly. "Not just the electric kind, the real kind." Word of the miracle spread like wildfire through the Appalachian region and beyond. Former miners who had left years ago started returning to see if the stories were true. Young families, tired of city life and high rents, began inquiring about the now electrified homes. Lucas offered extremely low lease rates to anyone willing to move in and contribute to the town's revival. The only condition was that they had to actually live there and help rebuild. The economic ripple effect was extraordinary. With reliable power restored, small businesses started reopening. A modern woodworking shop opened in one of the old company buildings, using local timber. A craft brewery set up in the former mine supply warehouse, using spring water from the hollow. An online data center company, attracted by the cheap renewable power and cool mountain climate, leased space in the old Tipple area for server farms. Jobs began returning, not the dangerous underground coal jobs of the past, but safer, skilled positions in maintenance, renewable energy, logistics, and tourism. Main Street slowly came back to life. The old company store was restored and turned into a community hub and general store. A small cafe opened, serving coffee and hot meals to workers. Children returned to the hollow, and the old schoolhouse was repaired and reopened with a handful of students. Laughter and the sound of daily life once again echoed between the mountains. The most emotional moment came during the official Lights Back On festival held 1 year after the main grid was restored. Hundreds of people gathered on Main Street as the sun set behind the ridges. String lights crisscrossed between restored buildings. Live bluegrass music filled the air. Tables were loaded with Appalachian food, fried chicken, biscuits, and fresh mountain trout. A restored mine whistle blew for the first time in years, sending chills through the crowd. Lucas Bennett stood on a small stage in front of the company store, wearing his familiar dark blue work shirt and brown leather jacket. His light stubble, now mixed with early gray hair earned from years of relentless work. When he spoke, his voice was steady but thick with emotion. "I didn't come here to bring back coal," he said. "I came here because this town still had life in it. The lights went out not because the people failed, but because the world moved on too fast and forgot them. Tonight, we prove that no place is truly dead if someone is willing to stay and fight for it." As the crowd cheered and the entire hollow glowed with warm light, Lucas looked out over the faces, old miners, young families, volunteers who had become friends. In that moment, every sleepless night, every financial crisis, every dangerous moment in the mine, and every time people had laughed at him felt worth it. In the years that followed, Black Hollow continued its remarkable transformation. The population grew from 87 to over 650 and was still rising. New homes were built using modern techniques while respecting the traditional Appalachian style. Tourism increased as people came to see the coal town that got its light back. The hybrid energy system became a model studied by other declining energy communities across America. Lucas established a small training center to teach renewable energy skills to local young people, giving them careers without forcing them to leave the mountains. There were still challenges, of course. Mountain storms could still damage lines. Funding was never easy. Some old-timers missed the cold days. But the town now had resilience, modern infrastructure, and most importantly, hope and pride. On a quiet summer evening several years after he first arrived, Lucas Bennett walked slowly up the hillside behind the town. The entire hollow glowed warmly below him, streetlights shining, houses lit, the tipple beautifully illuminated against the dark mountains. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. In the distance, he could hear faint music and laughter from the community center. He thought back to that rainy day when he first drove into a collapsed, dark village that everyone had abandoned. He remembered the laughter, the doubt, the freezing nights, and the moments he nearly broke. The journey had cost him financially and physically, but it had given him something far greater than money, purpose, community, and the knowledge that one person's stubborn belief could reignite an entire town. Lucas Bennett didn't just buy a collapsed coal mining village. He brought its light back, both literally and figuratively. Today, Black Hollow stands as a living testament to resilience, innovation, and the power of seeing opportunity where others see only ruins. The lights are on. Families are raising children here again. A new economy is growing. What was once mocked as a foolish dream has become a beacon of hope for declining communities everywhere. As the camera slowly pulls back over the glowing hollow, with warm lights twinkling between the dark Appalachian ridges and the soft sound of the mountain wind, one powerful truth remains. No town dies completely as long as someone refuses to let the lights go out. Lucas Bennett heard the call of a dark and silent village and answered it with everything he had. And in doing so, he didn't just turn the lights back on in Black Hollow. He lit a fire of possibility that continues to burn brightly to this day.